Bye 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 bye. Hey!
Hello, Jenny Raynsford.
Hello, David Hellard. I feel like we've been apart for such a long time.
Oh my days, yes, yeah, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just exhausted and overwhelmed at the moment. So.
Okay, so listener, if you haven't listened previously, very much David's been away for a few weeks. So let's find out about his trip to America.
Well, I don't know if I think we should almost park America because there's so many things to talk about from that trip.
Okay, let's do that.
And but there's a couple of things that I think we need to speak about while it's topical.
Oh, okay, okay. No, right then. So so that was I meant to ask these questions. So we're teasing America for the next bad stuff. That was totally intentional.
It was. Now we've obviously had in the last few months some great discussion about the name Nigel. And
so go back to of all the things I thought you were going to start with, Nigel wasn't the one.
But they've changed the names of hurricanes. They've changed the naming format, so they're not all women's names, which is.
What did it used to be?
Yeah, I think so. They used to always be female names, but I just don't know if I agree with. Imagine if your house has been destroyed, like blown away by Hurricane Ian. It just doesn't feel right, does it?
There's something.
It just doesn't. It doesn't.
Imagine that. Imagine you're telling this story, and it's really sad. They go, "I lost everything. I lost my house. We had to run for it. We lost everything we had, and all because of Hurricane Ian." And people go, you know, like, it takes the wind, literally takes the wind out of your sails, doesn't it? By leaving it like that.
Yeah, I think there needs to be
a gravitas associated. You have to, you've got to have a name, but it's got to be a comfort. It's got to be a power name if you're going to use exactly Hurricane Max.
Yeah, and that's not to, I don't think Hurricane David would be a great one either, or Hurricane. Basically, any name that's too familiar just doesn't work. It's got to be. So I think they've got these naming conventions wrong, because there must be an impact where you see on the news Hurricane Ian's coming, and you think, that's all right.
Hurricane Ian. I think I can handle it.
I mean, that must occur to people. It must have an impact in some way.
Oh, the other thing is, so actually there's an interesting sexism and racial bias to this as well, because all of these names seem very, very white, don't they? Like,
I can't remember the names before,
but they all seem to be very Western and white. There's no Hurricane Deshawn or anything else like that, is there? They're all very kind of David or whatever. I can't actually think of any other names right now. James or whatever. But they do seem to.
Let's go famous hurricanes.
And also, if it was true that they were all female, surely that is sexist in its own right as well. Like, it's a natural disaster, so it's obviously female.
So it was, it was Hurricane Katrina. Probably the most famous one in our days.
Yeah.
Which is
funny because the name Katrina I always associate with Katrina and the Waves, and her song was Walking on Sunshine. So it's almost ruined her legacy.
Although it seems I'm wrong about the naming format. It has absolutely ruined that. And last person to win Eurovision from the UK. But they've got, there seem to have been, in the early days, a lot of female names, and then so it used to be location. So it was Galveston, Atlantic Gulf, Miami, San Felipe. I mean, I'm reading an American website here. Florida Keys, Labor Day, Hurricane, New England Hurricane, Great Atlantic Hurricane.
Sorry, this is what they named. They just named it after the place it was.
It seems that used to be the way.
That would seem sensible. Why did they change it to just name it after people?
Well, I guess because you're going to get more than one Miami Hurricane, potentially.
That's true. I mean, yes. Yeah, I suppose that's true. That is true.
But then it seems to change to female names in the kind of 50s. So you've got Carol, Hurricane
Carol,
Hurricane Donna, Hurricane Diane.
Hurricane Donna, I think sounds frightening. I love that.
And then it goes to one of them. This list has the names, and then suddenly it's Tropical Storm Claudette. So I wonder what elevated Claudette to not being a hurricane to including the Hurricane Tropical Storm, and then it becomes men's names. It seems so maybe this is just coincidence, but then goes to Gilbert, Hugo. That's a good
Gilbert.
One. Hurricane Hugo.
Like we're only
Hurricane
going Gilbert. For names. We're only going for names from like the 1940s. Like what the fuck? Like what?
Yeah. And then it's got Mitch, Floyd, Keith. I mean, it's a shame we didn't have Keith Floyd in the order. Floyd, Keith, Alison, Iris, Isabel, Charlie, Francis, Ivan, Jean, Dennis, Katrina, Rita, Wilma, and Ike. So, yeah, the names they've got to match the force. Surely.
Why? I suppose the other thing I suppose about storms is that they probably, because they move, don't they? You can't have a geographical thing because they move. Whereas I was thinking, well, why aren't earthquakes named? Well, earthquakes are in a specific place. You can say that's the San Francisco earthquake, can't you? Or that's the San Francisco flood. Or something like that. I suppose a storm doesn't have a geographical start and end point necessarily, and so
and not necessarily an epicenter in the same way.
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose that makes more sense. So that does. But yeah, I mean, who names them? Who is because is it a committee or is it one person or I want to know. I want to know who
named hurricanes.
Or do they just get an intern? They get an intern to just write a bunch. You come up with all these names, try and pick ones that aren't very popular anymore. There's no association.
It says there are regular meetings of weather scientists around the world to decide on new names for the next year. I mean, I don't believe that.
What, in the pub?
Got past the committee.
They come together to do that. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, what a job. And the new names for this year are Aidan, Izzy, Ray, Bruna, Jacinta, Skylar, Carmelo, Canito, Tio, Daniela, Luna, Violetta. So how does Ian make that list?
So they bring that. It looks like they're bringing much more diversity into that, doesn't it? There is much more diversity. Good to know that there's diversity in natural disasters.
Although the Atlantic hurricane names seem to be less diverse. Alex, Bonnie, Colin. I mean, Hurricane Colin.
That is.
Danielle, Earl, Fiona, Gaston, Hermine, Ian, Julia, Carl, Lisa.
Gaston.
There you go.
Gaston. I mean, that is a good one to have, isn't it? We got like Beauty and the Beast theme going on as well. You just wait to be a really powerful one as well.
But I thought we'd also should discuss. I mean, you've obviously seen about the cheating accusations in chess.
Oh, in chess? No, I did. This is when you said, "Oh, we're going to talk about topical." So I thought you were talking about Kipchoge. That's what I thought you were going to start. We're going to kick off with. I didn't think you were going to go for hurricane naming and chess. No, I saw the headline about the chess thing, but the last thing I saw about chess is getting in the news quite a lot recently because the last scandal around chess was when that kid. That boy was playing that chess robot, and it broke his finger because he made a move it didn't like.
What? Surely that's made up story.
No, it's
Surely.
not. It's not. The robot fucking broke his finger.
I mean, that's got to be something where the robot thought the finger was a piece or something and then tried to move it, or just something.
I like to anthropomorphize this, saying no one expected Judgment Day to start with a chess game.
Yeah, and a broken finger. Like, it's where it begins.
So what happened here? Go on.
This one is rocking. This is the biggest scandal in chess, maybe ever.
How do you cheat at chess? Go on. I'm intrigued.
Magnus Carlsen, who is
the guy.
Yeah, the man. He's been the best chess player for.
Has he been accused of cheating?
So he's recently lost to a teen prodigy called Hans Niemann.
That's a good name. Hurricane Hans.
Hurricane Hans, yeah, he plays super fast.
Yeah,
that'd be incredible. So he's claimed that he thinks his opponent cheats by having vibrating anal beads that tell him.
Shut up.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
What?
Telling him the moves by vibrations in his bum. Because I don't know. I assume they don't strip.
What's an accusation? What?
Yeah.
Imagine going to the chessboard. Wait, I've got something to say. Anal beads.
And all I could, crazy, right? And all I can assume is that they must now X-ray people going in or strip search people going in to ensure that they're not getting messaging in some way.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I don't know where they go from here, because
the thing is, it's one of those things where you make that accusation about someone, there's no way they come back from it. It's like when Trump started, when Trump was running for president and he started calling, what's it called? Marco Rubio.
Hillary.
Sweaty.
Oh, yeah.
Kept saying, he's sweaty. And he started throwing water around. You couldn't get that image out of your mind every time you thought about Marco Rubio. And then you started talking about, what's it called? Jeb Bush as being low energy. Like you couldn't, he associated things with those names, which was, utterly brilliant and bullying and horrific. But the problem is that kid will always be known for anal beads now, regardless of whether it's true or not. There is no coming back from that.
But also, if you think about 9/11, as soon as a terrorist did something by smuggling stuff, suddenly we had to get our shoes checked.
Absolutely.
We had to security. So you have to set the rules based off the assumption that everyone could try and cheat to the maximum level. So does this mean before every chess game now, they're going to have to
anal probe?
Yeah. I mean, that is the only logical conclusion of how to preserve the sport's integrity.
Oh, well, that's true, isn't it? It took one shoe bomber, and that was all it was. The first time it had happened for everyone to have to check their shoes.
Yeah,
and that was it.
And that's the trouble. You've got to. So, will this be a role, and how much do you think this role would be paid? Like, if you specialize in the cavity search, the chest cavity search, yeah. I mean,
what a story! This is incredible.
So wait
a minute. But he's playing Magnus Carlsen. Who is giving him instruction? Like, who is better than Magnus Carlsen and giving him instructions?
I think it's the power finger of that robot. That's what it must be.
But that's the thing. I mean, it makes sense in if someone if you're doing quizzes, general knowledge, if there's some sort, you can see how cheating would work in the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, stuff like that. But when you're playing a grandmaster, like even if the other person directing you is a grandmaster, the chances that you're gonna win are still very kind of 50-50, very, very slim when you're playing against the best of the world. Who is going to be better than Magnus Carlsen? I guess
it must just be like linked up to Watson, or is it Clear Blue? The
Clear Blue. Wait a minute, isn't it Deep Blue? In Clear Blue, the pregnancy test.
True. Sorry.
I don't know, that's that. We hooked it up to the wrong thing.
Oh, turns out you've got a bum baby. I didn't think you could make those. Yeah, and so, but that, because isn't it quite stimulating in that area already? That
I don't know, David. I would expect you to know that, though.
Because surely the only way to try and counteract it is to try and up the speed of the moves, to just see if they then get so many vibrations, it kind of spins them off into a world of joy.
We've been trying to come up with like new and interesting ideas for the YouTube channel. For the BBR YouTube channel. I think you've probably come up with a Mr. Beast style YouTube test that we should do. Can David play a game of chess with anal beads controlled by whoever. I think this is good. I think we should do this. I think nothing to do with running, of course, but then, you know, when there's anything that we do with running, I like this idea. Could two people playing chess with anal beads actually concentrate enough to be able to do it?
And I want to know how big these beads are, and I want to.
Potential new sponsor.
Yeah. And I'd love to have that conversation of, well, what about anal beads? Because that must have happened where they're saying, right, okay, how are we going to, maybe tapping your leg? No, though, something in the ear, no, something in your hair. No, they'll strip search you everywhere except the bum hole. So, but anyway, so I thought that's going to be discussed while it's still topical. Also, something that, all drug news actually. So one of them is that cannabis remains on the anti-doping agency's list of prohibited items for 2023. Apparently which I still find just a bit weird, right? Even though it's legalized in some countries and doesn't help you in any way.
What's the justification?
I don't think there is any. I think it says they endangers the health or safety of competitors. They've not really.
Again, I feel like this is something for YouTube. I think this is a good YouTube test. Let's see, 400 meters. Everyone's just had some cannabis. Let's see how dangerous that is.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There is no proven, I don't think, benefit to it. And actually, if there was any benefit, it's more likely to be the CBD, which is legal, I believe. And so, Sha'Carri Richardson, who had smoked a little bit of weed and then couldn't race, she's never come back to form since that. And so it was because of her that this all came about, the potential reclassification. So it carries an out of competition positive test carries a penalty of a 3-month suspension, which can be reduced to 1 month with the completion of a treatment program. So this just
treatment
seems
program. What?
Yeah, I mean it just reeks of kind of stuffy boards, just saying, well, why? Because there's a cross country runner from the UK who was banned because of cocaine out of race, and you just think, what? I don't understand what business this is to do with. It's like banning someone for shoplifting. It's just completely irrelevant. It's
out of date. It's like when you're at school and they said, a policeman's going to come in to talk to you about drugs. And so the policeman comes in and he comes in with his little suitcase of different drugs and he's talking about drugs. He's going, and these are ecstasy tablets and you'll pay probably 10 to 12 pounds for one of these. And everyone in the class is going, yeah, all right then.
Sure.
Yeah. And he's getting everything wrong. He's getting everything. He's saying things that are side effects of it, and saying things that are side effects or symptoms and things like that. And everyone's just going, nah. You're totally wrong. That's what it feels. It feels as though like they're woefully out of date.
Yeah, and I wonder whether when this about the weed industry gets bigger, whether they potentially sue, because why not?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it feels like it's a lifestyle. It's like you're penalising a lifestyle element.
Rastafarians could potentially sue for religious reasons, right? Religious discrimination.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Like even from a common sense perspective, it doesn't make any sense. It feels like it's kind of a political. It's like political, like it's a punishment. Like, if we allow it, then it'd be seen that we're condoning it as a lifestyle. Yeah. That's like going, no, adulterers get a 3-month ban and then have rehabilitation. If you cheat on your partner, then you've got you're banned from competing. Mind you, they do that now. If you're Russian, you're banned from competing. Not if you take drugs. If you take drugs, you're fine as a Russian. But if you invade another country, then you're banned.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly inconsistencies. And did you see this article as well? It's a lot of doping catch up, actually. So
we love it. Actually, it's been a while, hasn't it? It has been a while. It's good to like get all the drug stories in one go.
So this ties into Russian doping, actually. So a teenage Russian tennis player was banned for 9 months after anti-doping breach. And what I found extraordinary about this, so it's a 14-year-old tennis player being banned for anti-doping, which is crazy young, for testing positive for meldonium. Now, what I found interesting...
Is that real?
Yeah, it does sound like made up.
What?
Meldonium.
Meldonium.
So meldonium is a limited market pharmaceutical developed in 1970. I remember reading about this now. It's basically a fatty acid that helps increase the transport of oxygen around the system.
It's invented. It's invented in the USSR as well. So it's it's a home drug,
and primarily used for animals, and then has been banned for human consumption in sports and things. But yeah, they've only been banned for 9 months because they were competing only their second senior tournament.
Punchy.
They had a random sample, and the ITIA said that the length of the ban was determined by the player's age level and lack of access to anti-doping education, and stated they would be providing them with a 1-to-1 education session as part of the reinstatement. So the suggestion is that because they're so young, they didn't know better and therefore shouldn't be banned. But I mean, do you think that's right?
I mean, it's a historic. I mean, like, if you're in Russia, I don't know. I mean, how much information about Russia being banned from stuff is actually? Yeah, actually, the information is a good point. It's a good point, actually.
Yeah, it's probably. It's going to be sold in their own narrative, isn't it? That it's either going to be everyone dopes and they've trapped Russia, or they're going to say the guy from Icarus who he stitched up the whole of Russia. Yeah. He was in charge of it. He's gone now, but there'll be some spin on it that's a positive spin, you'd think.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, but as a 14-year-old getting hold of this stuff, it seems crazy that you wouldn't imagine it's just the individual. There's got to be someone else involved.
Yeah, exactly.
But do we think that's right? Do we think you should have lesser terms if you're a junior, or not? Given that if you're doping from that age, do we think it's likely that people would change?
Take it out of Russia. If you had a 14-year-old British player who was doping at that age, and actually, this is not a good example. British. Take a. I'm trying to think of a completely clean country.
Iceland.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, and does that send the right message to be banning them for 9 months? Maybe it does. But I thought that was interesting. That one, it depends why you're banning them.
It depends why you're banning it. If you're banning them to say, I mean, the reason you're banning people is to send a message, isn't it? And so, so if that's 40, is that one of the youngest that's ever been banned for doping? You'd make sure. I don't know. I'm against those type of things. I hate that making an example of someone. But if their motivation was to make an example of someone, hit them with the same level ban. You've got to hit them with the same level ban as someone. So there's never that that doubt in your mind. That's the problem, isn't it? Is this with all these things? There's so many there's so many caveats that seem to be in place that in grey area. I don't know. I don't know.
Now we've had some feedback as well from the. We've already talked about spiking drinks, haven't we?
I think we have. Yes, we have.
Yeah. But feedback about the Queen. So
about the Queen. Okay.
About the Queen's death. So a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about
the Queen's death, or about the episode about the Queen's death.
About the Queen's death. Yeah. So Neil Catley's been feeding back. He's suggested an Irvin. Whose post was it again? Apologies. Irvin Walsh apparently had tweeted.
Yeah.
Almost immediately. Did you see this tweet? Oh no, it's been deleted now.
Oh no.
Yeah. Okay. So it does seem that humour is already back about the Queen, but not laughing at her, laughing at just using her as the subject. So we'll move on. But something else. Lance Armstrong was using 17 different drugs legally when he returned to the tour.
Wow.
Which I had no idea about. So he was caught for doping eventually when he returned, but because of his illness, he was allowed to take 17 different drugs that other cyclists wouldn't have been allowed to take.
What?
Which seems crazy.
I mean, like, wouldn't alarm bells ring somewhere? Like, when your thing is, what are the steps that happen in place whereby, and because the thing is, you can look at that in isolation, can't you? And you go, that seems ridiculous. But there must have been like steps in place where someone's gone, well, he needs these 12, these 5 because of this. And they're like, okay. And so, that's absolutely fine. And actually, there are these other ones which counter the side effects of this and everything. So, that's another one. Yeah. And then when it gets to 17, you think like, no one took a step back and went, but maybe they don't. Maybe that's the thing. Those kind of, maybe, I don't know. You know what it's like.
Yeah. And we'll discuss in a future episode about this, because at the moment with the tour I've been on, Golden Trail, and with quartz testing, which is a system that UTMB uses and the Golden Trail uses, a lot of what they're trying to do is stop people being able to use therapeutic use exemptions at all. They basically, and there's 2 different schools of thought. One is, if someone requires that just to be healthy, then they should be allowed to use it to be healthy, and then they can still compete using it, which then leaves the door open to everyone claiming that they need it to be healthy. And so suddenly it's then in effect a performance enhancing drug. Whereas the quartz school of thought is, if it can be used by someone to get a benefit, then we should just not allow it at all. So Lance is the classic example of that, where to have 17 of them just seems insane. That was the system, and no one's looking back on the system thinking that was wrong. Everyone's talking about when he was caught taking additional drugs. Yeah. Which is crazy that you can. Yeah. So that blew my mind when I heard it.
Wow.
Well, we were just doing a short catch up, weren't we? How have you been anyway, Jay? What's been going on in your world?
Not a massive amount. I can't remember. You just can't remember stuff. I think I say this every time. I just can't remember what's been doing. Oh, we got G-Law on when you were away. Oh, so that's the first time. That's the first time that we've G-Law's ever appeared to the BBR audience in person. I just heard about the legend that was him. So we did a live stream into the group for the first time as well, which I think worked all right.
Quality.
Yeah, it was good. It was really good.
Well, I've got it on my list to listen to, so I will be listening to that this week. And that was all about
Dragon's Back.
Dragon's Back. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So if you want to see it, you can go into the BBR group and watch it on there, or it's available on a YouTube channel as well. But we thought well, I independently thought, and then thought I'd tell you afterwards, that maybe a couple more of those, especially if those discussion type ones where I think getting other when we had like live questions coming in and stuff. I think that might work quite well for certain types of episodes, like panel episodes and things like that. But if you watched that and you liked it, let me know in the group, and just to hear some feedback about that as well, because I think. I think we did it at 2 in the afternoon on a Friday, which probably isn't the best time to do it, but that's the only time we could all get together. And it was a bit of a test because I thought it was going to go hideously wrong, but it worked out really, really well.
Oh, quality, yeah. And maybe we'll do some more of those in the future as well. And then if that goes well, and I've got a couple of other follow-up things I thought we'd throw into this one. One of them is did you know that? I've been observing the funeral from afar. Yeah. The one thing that struck me was apparently in Morrisons. Do you hear about this? How Morrisons paid their respects? They lowered the sound of the beeps on their machines.
Oh wow!
Out of respect to the Queen, which
it's what she would have wanted.
It just struck me as being. It's just so weird that would.
And then they told everyone about it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then obviously Kipchoge broke the records. Should we talk about that? I mean, he's just great.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Actually, we can probably go into more detail, but I'm glad you mentioned that because we did get some feedback. I'm glad you mentioned his name as well as a non-Western runner, because we got some feedback on Twitter.
Yeah.
From Paul Donlan.
Yeah.
I don't know what he sounds like, but I'm going to add my own voice here. Your podcast of 2nd of September didn't say the names of the winning runners at Sierra Zinal, Mark Kangogo and Esther Chesang. You are part of the problem if you can't applaud the amazing performances of the people who win these big races. Ignorant conclusions reached. Okay,
I mean, I can't remember what we said about Sierra Zinal. I mean, he's got a point. Yeah. Actually, on the day I struggled to pronounce Esther's name just because we couldn't find her details. She wasn't on our run list.
Oh, really?
So we had there was that's is part of the problem of reporting is when you turn up to a lot of these races, you're trying not to talk about the Kenyans or the East Africans or the Africans, because you don't want to group people in that way, for exactly the reasons he said. But then when you have a start list where Esther had never run on trail before, she'd never run in Europe before, she'd raised money by, I thought we had talked about this. She raised money by selling.
To be fair, I can't remember the names being mentioned at all. I thought we were talking quite generally about it rather than the kind of the specifics of the race, about the idea.
Absolutely.
But,
yeah, completely. And I mean, it's and we were talking about whether it would be bad for the sport, but we can say Mark can go. Let's be honest, like Mark's an amazing runner, but no one's going to follow him on Instagram, and he's not going to have an impact on European running culture in any way. I wouldn't imagine. He may come back and run the World Cup races in Switzerland and maybe the odd trail race, but we probably won't get to know anything more about him as an individual.
Right.
And even if I speak to Mark, he's a lovely guy, but he kind of lives in a small village in Kenya, and he's quite a quiet guy. He's not that relatable to us, and saying we're not that relatable to them as individuals because we just have very different lifestyles. But yeah, Esther, she we didn't know anything about her because she didn't have any. She had one search where she appeared in the whole of the internet.
Right.
She referenced once, and so you then try to pronounce someone's name correctly when you're recording a super fast update of everything that's going on in the race.
Yeah. And
you have to try and remember all these names that you've never heard of before. You don't know how to pronounce them. And so, and you can't look at paperwork or you're looking directly in the camera. So yeah, it's tricky. And, but yeah, fair enough. Esther and Mark, the two winners, great performances. Fair point. But yeah,
I think there's something like criticizing BBR for lack of accuracy. I mean, like, yeah, you're clearly not a regular listener. Like,
true.
Yeah, that's the thing. But yeah, Kipchoge.
I mean, I don't know there's much to say really, other than it's incredible. What was interesting is the female winner. I can't remember her name, so.
Part of the problem, David. Part of the problem.
I've been part of the problem massively. It was an EPB by sort of like 20 minutes, which is insane.
Catherine de Bruyne.
Yeah, Catherine de Bruyne, that's right. So she's quite interesting in that she's one. I think she's the only person to have run a sub, is he the only person, or there's only 4 people to have run a sub 2 minute 800, and to now have broken 2:20.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Either she's the only, it was either 1 in 4 or she's the only one. But yeah, to have she wasn't listed as one of the favourites, anything like that, because her time previously was significantly slower, like a 2:37 or 2:38, and she's now propelled herself straight into one of the best marathon runners of all time.
Wow.
Which is nuts to. Well, imagine. Well, just think of that speed. She's gone from being. I think I'd probably, if I was at my peak wearing the trainers, the fastest I could have ever run a marathon would have been about that. And she's gone from being that to just suddenly being now winning Berlin. You're like, wow, in one race difference, just insane.
And when was the race before then, when she got that time?
It was relatively recently. Let's have a quick search, because that's where she must have blown up in that race, surely.
Yeah, something must have gone wrong. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Which would have been understandable if that was her first marathon, did you say?
Yeah, that's right. Oh wow, there's a Catherine de Bruyne who's a wheelchair cyclist as well. Maybe I've read the wrong name. Maybe Catherine won the wheelchair Berlin race.
Oh, if you got that wrong, that would be incredible.
No, there are 2 Catherine de Bruynes. How bizarre. Yeah, what a coincidence. So you'd think she must have blown up to have got the 2:37. I don't understand how you could, because she wouldn't have gone out pacing that unless she was jogging it, maybe. Which is just because you'd just think about the pace difference you'd have to go into, the intent to have run that 2:17. I'd love the idea that she actually ran a 2:37 flat out and then just thought, I know, I'm going to try and drop 50 seconds off every mile and see how that goes.
I'd like to see. I'd like to check with betting shops and everything what the whether any bets were placed on her winning stuff. And so the first one was a decoy, and then she put a stack of cash on herself.
Yeah,
mind games. It's like anal beads. Mind games.
Yeah, completely. So that's a kind of. Should we? And Alexander Sorokin, we've got to mention him as well. I mean, his 24-hour time, break the records, absolutely incredible. He's almost got to 200 kilometers in 24 hours. Sorry, 200 miles in 24 hours. That's going to be a big mark, right? First person to run it.
200 miles in 24 hours. Fucking hell.
So he's averaging 7:15 per mile.
I mean, that is insane. That is insane. Just because it's what? That is insane.
So I mean, it's he's in such a league of his own, and that's got to be so temptingly close for him now.
Could you imagine saying that? Imagine, say, 10 years ago, you say, okay, I think it's possible for someone to run 200 miles in 24 hours. And people were just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, there's no way. There's no way.
The thing is, the pace he's running, it's almost, because it's such a long event, it's almost the same split, where his 7:15 pace, it might still be 7:15 pace to do the 200 miles, just because there's so many laps, there's so many miles that you do that a second times 200 is only, 3 minutes. So for that extra mile, it might be like 7:15.9 or 0.99 and then 7:15 flat. And yeah, that's got to be his next target. So incredibly well done to him.
So it's just hard to even comprehend it. That's the thing.
Yeah, massively. And you've got to wonder what the 12-hour record should now be, given he's done that time.
Yeah,
it should be sub 11 quite easily, you'd think. Well, there's a quick roundup of topical stuff. So hopefully now we can next week talk utter dribblage per usual. So
I like the fact you think we haven't talked utter dribble in this one.
But right, I've got so much work to do, catching up still. So
see you later, do-badders. We've all got work. We're all so busy.
Yeah, it's nuts. So thanks for listening, guys. And what episode should we push people to if they listened to the first one? Anything relevant to this? We've spoken.
Oh no, there's an amazing post in the Facebook group which we'll talk about, where someone has just joined and started going through the episodes, and they've just sum up the BBR experience beautifully. But the thing we have to push is the A to Z. So go to if you're listening to this and you don't want to go all the way back to the start, listen to the A to Z of Bad Boy Running, because that'll save you a lot of heartache.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.
See you later. Bye 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 bye. Bye 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 bye.
Fuck you, buddy.